There are moments in life when the quietest people surprise the world. A single father worn by life, but rich in grace. A little girl with eyes that see truth where others see code. And a room full of powerful leaders who never imagined that help would arrive in sneakers and innocence. Today, you will witness how heart outshines rank, how humility humbles authority, and how a child's courage can save more than systems. It can save the souls who build them. If you're someone who believes that goodness still matters, that strength can whisper, and that miracles sometimes come holding a parent's hand, then stay with us. This story will remind you why we still have hope in humanity. Before we begin, if heartfelt stories like this speak to you, we warmly invite you to join our channel. A gentle subscribe helps us continue sharing moments of courage, kindness, and quiet heroes who restore faith in this world. Now, let's begin. The automatic glass doors whispered open as Daniel Carter stepped into the fortified command center, his daughter's small hand tucked securely inside his own. The air inside was crisp, too clean, too sterile, smelling faintly of metal recycled oxygen and the quiet hum of machines running calculations that decided real lives. Emily's sneakers made soft taps on the polished floor blue backpack, bouncing slightly with each step. She craned her neck, eyes wide, captivated by the hundreds of glowing screens sprawling like an electric horizon. Streams of data defense grids, satellite telemetry things that looked abstract to most adults, yet spoke to her in their own mysterious language. Daniel squeezed her hand gently. He didn't need to say anything. He rarely did. Silence was a language he had mastered long before fatherhood. At the reception checkpoint, a stern-faced guard with ribbons across his chest looked Daniel over. His tone wasn't unkind, just protocol sharp. Identification. Daniel handed over his veteran ID and maintenance job form. The guard scanned it, eyes flicking between the document and the quiet man in front of him. Daniel stood straight shoulders, broad beneath his faded green shirt. Long hair, brushed behind his ears. Posture, calm but disciplined. There was something about him, an old steadiness that made one hesitate before underestimating him. Maintenance tech position, the guard confirmed. Daniel nodded once. Just trying to work. Keep things running. That's all. The guard's gaze slipped to Emily. We usually don't have kids inside. Military installation. Daniel's voice was warm but firm. I'm a single dad. Couldn't leave her home. I won't get in the way. Emily lifted her hand and waved. Hi. The hardened soldier blinked, caught off guard by innocence, in a space where innocence rarely breathed. Proceed. Daniel offered a respectful nod and guided Emily forward. Rows of soldiers in fatigues marched past, but among them were civilian engineers, in suits, analysts in pressed shirts, and intelligence personnel, with cold eyes softened only by fatigue. The atmosphere was urgency wrapped in discipline. As they entered the central command floor, Emily froze in awe. Towering screens covered the walls, streaming seismic graphs, cyber defense grids, missile trajectories, maps with pulsing red markers. Every monitor blinked like the heart of a living, breathing organism. It looks like the world's biggest computer brain, Emily whispered. Daniel knelt, smoothing a loose strand of her blonde hair behind her ear. It kind of is, he murmured. A lot of smart people doing their best to protect others. Like superheroes, he smiled, soft and tired. Real ones rarely wear capes. Before Emily could answer, alarms erupted, sharp, jarring, slicing through the room. Red lights pulsed. A warning banner flashed across every screen. Critical system malfunction. Cyber response. Network offline. Voices rose sharp and panicked. We're losing satellite sync. Fallback systems are failing. Who ran this patch? It's cascading. Secure perimeter protocols. Now, engineers sprinted. Officers barked orders. Phones rang in frantic succession. Emily clutched Daniel's fingers. "Daddy." "It's all right," he said, softly pulling her close. His heartbeat didn't change. His breathing didn't spike. Some alarms only reminded a man of louder ones from another life. A suited analyst brushed past and muttered, "Great. And now we've got random civilians in here." Daniel didn't respond. He never wasted breath defending himself from people who didn't know him. A group of officers jogged by, one glancing at Daniel suspiciously. Another scoffed maintenance applicant. "What, here to fix a light bulb?" Laughter followed. Emily lowered her head. Daniel leaned down, whispering, "People fear what they don't control." "It's okay." Her small hand curled around his shirt. Just then, a door slid open with an authoritative hiss, and a hush fell across a section of the room. Officers straightened instinctively. Admiral Rebecca Hayes entered like a blade-sharp uniform commanding posture, ribbons catching light. Her presence shifted the air as if the room itself braced. "Status," she demanded. "Ma'am, network breach suspected," an officer said. "Core defense grid unresponsive. Could be foreign interference." Rebecca's jaw tightened. "Contain it. No excuses." Daniel watched her with quiet respect. Leadership wasn't about volume, it was about weight. She carried plenty. Emily tugged his sleeve. "Daddy, why are they talking about routing protocols wrong?" He blinked, surprised. "What do you mean?" She pointed at a nearby screen. "That." It was a scrolling command line tracing firewall behavior. Daniel looked. She was right. Something was off. Emily didn't see screens. She saw patterns, pathways, rhythms. A young tech snapped, "Hey kid, don't point. This isn't." Suddenly monitors flickered violently. Error logs cascaded. A high-pitched system alert pierced the room. Panic escalated. "It's spreading." "Shut down the uplink. I can't. Permissions are locked out." Rebecca turned sharply, eyes blazing. "Who authorized the last override? Answer me." Silence. Fear. A few swallowed hard. Emily whispered, "They're looking the wrong way." Daniel gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "Memories are one thing," he murmured, "but this is their system, sweetheart." Around them, the chaos intensified. Analysts argued, soldiers tensed, and Rebecca's patience thinned to steel wire. A senior engineer cursed, slamming a tablet. "We need a miracle." Emily raised her chin, eyes bright with quiet courage. "Daddy, I think I can help." Daniel inhaled slowly. He had taught her humility, respect, caution, but also purpose. Gifts unused became burdens. He crouched down eye level with her. "Remember what we said. You don't owe the world your mind. But when you give it with kindness." She nodded. Before he could stop her, she stepped forward. "Excuse me," she called out, small voice steady. Every head turned. Rebecca's eyes narrowed. "Who is this child?" Daniel moved up protectively but didn't pull Emily back. "She's with me, just observing." A technical specialist sneered. "Sir, this is a military cyber emergency, not a field trip." Emily swallowed but didn't step back. "Ma'am, your routers are looping wrong, and the backup failsafe is pointing to itself. That's why nothing's working. You need to break the cycle and reset permission keys before switching to manual." Silence crashed louder than alarms. Rebecca stared, stunned, not by disrespect, but by impossible precision. How do you know that Emily blinked innocently? "It's right there." She pointed at the scrambled command list. Several analysts leaned in, eyes widening as realization hit. "She's right. That protocol chain. How did we miss that?" No way. Rebecca studied Daniel's suspicion and awe warring in her gaze. "Who are you?" Daniel met her eyes calmly. a father trying to provide, and a man who's seen systems fail harder than this. Rebecca didn't flinch, but something flickered in her curiosity. Maybe respect. If she's wrong, this gets worse. Daniel's voice was steady as a heartbeat. If she were wrong, she wouldn't have spoken. Emily stepped up to the console, small fingers hovering respectfully. "May I, Mom?" A weighty hush fell. The entire room held its breath, not because a child approached a military console, but because somewhere deep down, every soul sensed a story was beginning. Something rare, something quiet, but powerful. Rebecca hesitated, then slowly she nodded. "Proceed." Emily exhaled softly, her father's steady confidence wrapped around her like armor. And with a gentle press of her fingertip, she began the first keystroke in a moment that would echo far beyond those steel walls. A single keystroke. That was how the world could change quietly without fanfare in the hands of someone small enough to be overlooked. As Emily's fingers touched the keyboard, the room seemed to inhale as one. Soldiers stiffened, analysts froze mid-breath. Admiral Hayes's gaze sharpened like a drawn blade. Lines of code pulsed across the screen. Error messages flared, then blinked away. Systems stuttered, then flickered back as if gasping awake. Red alerts shifted to amber. The chaos softened into a stunned hush. And then the light steadied. The alarms dimmed. A green system icon flashed softly on every display. Stabilizing network recovery in progress. A gasp rippled across the floor. Emily stepped back, breath trembling with relief. She looked up at Daniel, searching his face. He didn't beam or boast. He only nodded, eyes warm with a quiet pride only a father could carry. But shock rarely stays silent long, especially in rooms built on rank and ego. A young specialist muttered sharply, "Seriously? We're letting a kid push buttons." Now, Colonel Mark Bennett turned, jaw tightening as though the very air offended him. His uniform was immaculate posture, stiff as steel. Authority clung to him like armor, though not the kind that inspired trust. A coincidence, he snapped. Systems were already cycling recovery. Actually, a technician began, but Bennett raised a hand, silencing him. Admiral Rebecca Hayes stepped forward. "Who authorized that input?" Daniel remained calm. She asked permission. "You granted it." Rebecca's eyes flicked between them, controlled but swirling with conflict. Duty and logic warred in her expression. Pride, too. It was hard to embrace miracles when they didn't wear rank. Before she could respond, laughter cut through the tension. A cybersecurity contractor leaned back in his chair, smirking. "Well, congratulations. We've hit a new record. The Pentagon hires 8-year-olds now." Emily flinched just barely. Daniel's fingers brushed her shoulder, gentle but grounding. He didn't glare, he didn't bite back. He simply looked at the man with an expression too calm to be anger. It was dignity, the kind that unsettles those who don't have it. Another analyst chuckled under his breath. "Maybe she can fix my Wi-Fi next." The mockery hung in the air like smoke, thin but stinging. Emily's eyes lowered, shoulders curling inward. Innocence bruises fast. Daniel crouched, voice a soft anchor. "Look at me." She lifted her gaze. "You did good. You always do good. Let noise stay noise." She took a breath, small, steady but brave. Rebecca's expression shifted something in the father-daughter bond, disarming her usual iron grip. But command reflex returned quickly. She folded her arms. "This is classified infrastructure. Unauthorized access, child or not, is a violation." Daniel's voice was measured. She didn't breach. She helped. There's a difference, and if she had been wrong, Bennett challenged. Daniel met his stare. She wouldn't speak unless she believed she could help. I raised her that way. Bennett scoffed. Raised her to meddle in national defense. Emily's voice, tiny but clear, slipped in. I only wanted to stop the hurt. The room quieted again. It wasn't defiance, it was sincerity. And sincerity is disarming in places built on posturing. Admiral Hayes studied Emily. Really studied her. Something softened. Confusion. Curiosity. A crack in armor, small but real. Before she could speak, alarms flared again, short, sharp, not catastrophic, but a warning system reset. A tech startled. Secondary scan triggered. Still unstable. Relief vanished. Tension ignited anew. Bennett seized the moment. If this girl claims capability, let her prove it. Fix the entire network. Emily froze. The room stilled. Harshness clung to his words like frost. Daniel straightened slowly, and the quiet power behind his presence finally revealed itself, not loud, not forceful, but unshakably resolute. She is a child, he said. No anger, just fact. Not a tool for your pride. Bennett's jaw clenched. Then perhaps she shouldn't interfere in military matters. Rebecca interjected sharply. Enough. Her voice cut the room like a scalpel. Authority, real authority, always sounds different. Less bark, more certainty. Colonel, stand down. Bennett stiffened, but obeyed, tension thrumming in his rigid posture. Rebecca turned to Daniel, eyes holding his thoughtfully. You walked into a battlefield you didn't expect. You handled yourself like someone familiar with storms. A flicker of something passed between them, not romance, not yet, but recognition. Humans who had carried weight. Humans who had been carved by duty and loss. Daniel didn't break her gaze. Storms remind you what truly matters. Emily leaned closer to him, clutching his sleeve. That small gesture struck something deeper in Rebecca than she intended to reveal. Something human beneath the metals. Rebecca cleared her throat. This isn't resolved. We cannot make assumptions based on unusual circumstances. Emily looked down. Daniel's hand brushed her back, steady as heartbeat. We aren't here to prove anything, he said gently. Just to apply for a maintenance job. A ripple of surprise moved across the room. A man like him, quiet strength presence built by experience, not ego applying to clean wires and fix consoles. A contradiction so sharp it drew stares. A technician whispered, "If he's just a maintenance guy, I'm Santa Claus." The corner of Daniel's mouth lifted, barely a smile, more a sigh disguised as grace. Rebecca exhaled slowly, as if steadying herself. We will verify everything, starting with system diagnostics. No more surprises. Bennett muttered, "That's one word for it." Daniel took Emily's hand. "Come on, sweetheart. Let's give them space." Emily nodded, but before turning, she looked up at Rebecca, eyes full of something rare in places like this, trust. I wasn't trying to show them. I was trying to help. Rebecca swallowed. For a heartbeat, her rigid facade cracked. I know, she said quietly. And we are evaluating. Not praise, not gratitude, but cracks are where light gets in. As Daniel guided Emily toward the corridor, whispers stirred behind them. Skepticism, disbelief, pride stung by innocence. But also, something else. Curiosity. And beneath it, grudging respect. Because sometimes the most disruptive force in a war room isn't a threat. It's a little girl who believes in fixing things, not conquering them. The corridor was quieter, the air cooler and less frantic than the command floor. Yet every footstep Daniel and Emily took echoed with the weight of what had just happened. Behind them, voices rose and fell, half disbelief, half bruised pride. But ahead there was calm, like stepping from a storm into a church. Daniel walked slowly, not rushing, not fleeing. Emily held his hand, but this time it wasn't out of fear. There was a steadiness in her step, the kind a small soul gains only after standing tall in the face of adults who doubt them. "Daddy," she whispered, Did I make trouble? He stopped kneeling so his eyes met hers. Even the overhead lights softened around them, catching the faint worry on her face. No, he said gently. You didn't make trouble. You offered help. Some people are scared of help they didn't ask for. Emily's little brow furrowed, thinking deeply in that way she did. Logic. Wrestling with emotion, innocence, trying to understand ego. I just wanted to fix it, she murmured. Broken things should be fixed, not ignored. Daniel smiled, quiet, tender, a little proud, a little sad. That's why the world needs hearts like yours. Before she could answer, a voice called from behind them. Hold up! Bootsteps approached, brisk, but not threatening. Dr. Sarah Miller appeared, dark hair pulled back on badge, swinging expression, not stern but curious. Kind eyes, the sort that see people before rank. She crouched to Emily's eye level. What you did back there? She shook her head softly. That wasn't luck. Emily bit her lip. I just read it. Sarah smiled. Most people here would trade a security clearance for just reading what you saw. Daniel inclined his head. We appreciate the acknowledgement. Sarah's gaze shifted to him, perceptive, searching. You're not maintenance material? Daniel didn't bristle. He never met challenge with hostility, only truth. Sometimes life takes us places below our skill, so we can raise someone else above theirs. Sarah's eyes softened. She understood more than she asked. But before she could speak again, shouting erupted from the command floor. It's failing again. Systems crashing. We lost secondary control. Lockdown protocol triggered. The comm shattered. A security officer appeared. Admiral Hayes requests you. Both of you. Daniel exchanged a glance with Emily. She nodded, small chin set, with that quiet courage only children of real warriors ever learn. They returned to the command hub. Lights flashed again. Screens flickered, as if breathing in panic. And amid the storm stood Admiral Rebecca Hayes, jaw-clenched composure, stretched thin but unbroken. When she turned her eyes, found Daniel and Emily immediately. Rebecca's voice was clipped. System relapsed. The fix held only part way. Whatever you saw, it wasn't a simple glitch. Colonel Bennett stood nearby, smirking faintly. Funny how that works. Child presses a button. Things get worse. Who could have predicted? Sarah shot him a glare. The system was failing before she touched it. Bennett ignored her, his arms crossed in smug rigidity. If she's the genius you all think she is, go on. Be the savior. The room's tension thickened, heavy as metal. Emily shrank a little, not from fear, but from being thrust again into adult territory, into pride battles she didn't want to fight. Daniel stepped forward, voice calm, but firm. Enough. Something in the word halted even seasoned officers. He rested his hand lightly on Emily's shoulder, reassurance, not pressure. She does not perform tricks for pride or panic. If she helps, it's on her terms. Rebecca's eyes narrowed. But it wasn't anger, it was consideration. Something shifting inside her, learning humility, where there had only been command. She looked at Emily, and her voice changed from order to request. Can you show us what you saw? Emily hesitated. Then, in a quiet, determined whisper, only if nobody yells. Rebecca blinked, then nodded solemnly. No one will yell. She turned, steel in her tone. That's an order. Emily approached the console again. She didn't rush. She observed, slow, thoughtful. She studied lines of code, pauses in network traffic recursive loops. Tiny fingers hovered. She pointed. There, she whispered. Everyone kept looking at the crash point. But the problem starts earlier. The system keeps handing off to a part that's already tired, like asking someone who's exhausted to run again and again. Analysts leaned in, realizing. Dr. Sarah breathed out. A recursive overload flaw. Emily nodded. And then it gives up. But the system doesn't know that. So it loops wrong. Anyone can patch the crash. But you have to heal the tired part. A silence fell, reverent, not stunned this time. Daniel's gaze softened. She sees systems the way people see faces. Rebecca exhaled slowly, awe slipping through her armor. Can you fix it? Emily shook her head. No. Only the people who built it should fix it. Otherwise, you break the trust part. Rebecca stared at her, not as a child, not as a problem, as something rare, a compass pointed true when everyone else followed protocol instead of truth. Bennett scoffed, but it was weaker this time, shaken. She talks in riddles. Daniel looked at him, not hard, not angry, just steady enough to make a man feel seen and measured. Riddles are what you hear when your ears were trained only for orders. Bennett flinched. Rebecca's eyes flicked to Daniel's surprise, then respect. Emily backed away from the console. I'm done now. Rebecca straightened, adjusting her uniform, grounding herself in the moment. She offered something unexpected. Thank you. Emily blinked, surprised. Gratitude spoken from power carries a different gravity. Daniel took Emily's hand again. Rebecca watched them, voice quieter. This isn't over. We'll need you both again. Daniel nodded once. We'll be around. As they turned to leave, Sarah whispered, She didn't just fix code. She made grown soldiers listen. Daniel smiled faintly. She reminds us that strength isn't always volume. They walked out, two quiet figures, leaving behind a room full of medals, noise, and shaken certainty. Sometimes the bravest breakthroughs aren't loud. Sometimes they're 8 years old. They exited the command floor once more, but this time the silence felt different. The first time they left as unknowns. Now every step carried the weight of a disruption, neither planned nor welcomed, a child who saw truth, and a father who never asked to prove anything. In Daniel's world, dignity wasn't loud. It existed in the spaces where one refused to be rattled by arrogance. Yet the storm behind them wasn't done. Power rarely lets go quietly. As they reached a side hall, Emily tugged at Daniel's sleeve. Dad, why were they all so tight, like they couldn't breathe? Daniel paused, considering. Sometimes the higher someone climbs, the more afraid they are of falling. Emily blinked, so they forgot to look up instead of down. He smiled gently. Something like that. Before he could say more, heavy footsteps approached. They turned to see Admiral Hayes striding toward them, the kind of walk that didn't chase but commanded ground quickly anyway. Mr. Carter. Emily. Daniel straightened instinctively, though he didn't snap to attention. Respect didn't always need rigid posture. Rebecca stopped a few feet from them, jaw set, but eyes uncertain. A woman used to answers, wrestling with a moment she couldn't file neatly into protocol. You two shouldn't leave yet, she said. The system isn't stable, and we need clarity. Daniel's voice was steady. We don't seek involvement beyond helping when harm appears, Admiral. Rebecca studied him. That's the part I can't reconcile. You walk into one of the most secure facilities in the nation for a maintenance job, and your daughter casually points out vulnerabilities no senior engineer has detected in 2 years. Daniel met her gaze. Calm, unwavering. Life trained some of us differently. Something flickered in her eyes. Curiosity, suspicion, respect. Before any of them spoke again, Colonel Bennett emerged from a nearby doorway. He strode forward with a confidence sharpened by ego and bruised by embarrassment. There they are, he muttered as though announcing culprits. Emily instinctively stepped closer to Daniel. Bennett noticed. His lip twitched, not in empathy but irritation. Admiral Hayes Bennett declared, If this... display of luck is to be taken seriously, we should test it. Rebecca stiffened slightly. Colonel. He pressed ahead. Men like him rarely paused once their pride was wounded. Let the girl attempt a full system analysis. If she is what some here seem to believe, she will succeed. If not, Daniel's tone cut in softly, yet with unexpected authority. She has no need to justify herself to you, the colonel glared. This is a national defense system, not a school science fair. Daniel didn't flinch. And she is a child, not your scapegoat for a system failing under your watch. Bennett's nostrils flared. A man unused to being seen through suddenly transparent. He jabbed a finger toward the command center. If that girl is some prodigy, let her prove it. Emily's hand tightened around her father's. Her breath trembled, not from inability, but from exhaustion, from being pulled into a world where innocence felt like intrusion. Daniel knelt and turned to her, voice soft. You owe them nothing. Emily's voice was a whisper. But people could get hurt if it breaks again. Rebecca listened, and something shifted deeper inside her. Duty, yes, but also humanity. A recognition she didn't expect that greatness didn't always wear rank and courage, sometimes came holding a father's hand. She looked at Bennett, her tone sharp as a blade drawn without flourish. Colonel, stand down. Bennett stared at her, as though she'd betrayed gravity itself. Ma'am, that's an order. He clenched his jaw, swallowed hard, and took a step back. Orders obeyed, but resentment coiled beneath. Rebecca then turned to Emily, not commanding now, but asking, Emily, no one here expects you to carry the weight of our failures, but your insights are valuable. If you wish to help further, we will listen, not demand. Emily studied her face, searching for truth. Then she nodded softly. Not from obedience, but kindness. Okay, but I need to sit. Rebecca blinked, as though the request cracked something inside her reality, reminding her genius comes in small bodies that still tire easily. She gestured to a nearby ops table. Of course. Emily climbed into the chair legs dangling. Technicians paused mid-task, unsure whether to feel threatened or humbled by the small figure swinging her feet while scanning data streams. Daniel stood behind her, like an anchor, silent, steady. His presence didn't shout protection. It emanated it like warmth from a hearth. Emily stared at streams of code again, brows furrowed. She touched the screen, lightly tracing patterns in the air. It's not one problem, she whispered. It's a chain. Someone patched things wrong lots of times. It built a maze. And now the maze is breaking. Bennett scoffed. She's guessing? Sarah Miller, who had quietly followed, stepped forward. No. She's recognizing systemic pattern collapse, something we warned about months ago. Bennett glared. Coincidence. Sarah crossed her arms. Denial. Rebecca cut in before the argument erupted. Emily, what do you think should happen? Emily bit her lip. I think the system needs a rest. Rebecca blinked. A rest? Emily nodded. Even computers get tired. They pretend they can keep going until they can't. You can't force them to run forever. You have to let them breathe. There was stillness, the kind that follows truth, spoken simply. Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder. She sees things differently. Rebecca didn't hide the awe this time. Differently may be exactly what we need. Bennett bristled. This is ridiculous. Machines do not rest. We need protocol, not poetry. Daniel looked at him quietly. When a mind can't grasp a perspective, it attacks the language instead. Even Sarah's lips twitched at that. Rebecca inhaled slowly, gaze fixed on Daniel. And what perspective do you grasp, Mr. Carter? Daniel's eyes held depth, haunted yet whole. That sometimes the smallest voice in the room hears the truth loudest. Rebecca held his gaze. Something unspoken connected not romance, but recognition. Respect, born not of rank, but of soul. Finally, Emily slid from the chair. "I don't want to do more right now." Daniel nodded. "Then we're done." Rebecca stepped aside, giving them passage. "You both will remain on base until this is resolved. Not threat. Not command. Invitation dressed as necessity." Daniel inclined his head. "We'll stay." As they walked away, the room didn't return to normal because something in it had changed. A general's certainty cracked, an officer's pride shaken, a scientist's hope dared to rise, and a father and daughter walked quietly into a future that neither side yet understood, but none could ignore. Sometimes the greatest challenges are not the ones the world sets for us. They are the ones we refuse to let pride force upon our children. They walked away again, but now the silence felt heavier, not uncertain, not fearful, but weighted with what lingered in the air behind them. Emily had not solved the network fully. She had done something deeper. She had exposed a truth no one wanted to acknowledge. The system wasn't simply failing. It was tired, layered in patches, crumbling under years of quick fixes and pride. And Daniel knew better than anyone when systems break. Quietly, the loudest are often the ones who fear being revealed. He guided Emily toward a side seating area, a quiet alcove overlooking the airfield beyond reinforced glass. Outside, jets cut the sky in silent arcs, engines distant but powerful. Yet inside this building, the loudest noise wasn't aircraft. It was pride, scraping against reality. Emily climbed onto a bench, swinging her legs. Daniel sat beside her. For a moment, neither spoke. They just breathed. "Daddy." Emily murmured, "They're scared." He nodded. People often are when someone small sees something big. She leaned her head against his shoulder. "I didn't mean to make them upset." He wrapped an arm around her, protective, gentle. "Kindness doesn't always look like comfort, sweetheart. Sometimes it looks like truth." Her little fingers curled around his sleeve, grounding herself in him, her constant, her shield, her steady world. A rustle of footsteps broke the quiet. Dr. Sarah Miller approached, carrying 2 small paper cups. She offered one to Emily warm cocoa, the other to Daniel black coffee. Emily's eyes brightened. "Thank you, ma'am." Sarah smiled softly. "Geniuses deserve cocoa, and heroes need coffee." Daniel took the cup, offering a humble nod. "We're not heroes." Sarah studied him, not the long hair, not the simple clothes, but the posture, the eyes, the calm command without effort. "I've met enough men in uniform to recognize one who never stopped serving, even when he stepped off the battlefield." Daniel didn't answer. He didn't need to. She sat across from them. "You know," she began quietly. "There's a term in psychology, pattern intuition. Some rare minds don't analyze, they feel structure. They sense when something's wrong, the way a musician hears a wrong note." Emily tilted her head. "I don't hear notes. I see threads and knots. Some are loose, some tight, some tied wrong." Sarah inhaled. "Exactly that." Before they could continue, a shadow fell across the hallway. Colonel Bennett again. His presence always arrived like a cold draft, not sudden, but unwelcome. He approached, lips thin. "I see we're still entertaining the civilian child prodigy conference." Sarah's expression chilled. "Colonel, she's 8, and she's tampering with military intelligence systems." Bennett crossed his arms. "I don't care how precocious she is. This situation is dangerous." Daniel stood slowly, deliberately, not aggressive, but like a mountain rising. He didn't speak. He simply looked at Bennett, steady as stone. Bennett bristled defensively, as if challenged by a man who hadn't even spoken a word. Emily slid off the bench and stepped forward, small but unafraid. "Sir," she said, voice soft but clear. I didn't break anything. Bennett scoffed. Good intentions don't secure a nation. Emily blinked up at him. Fear doesn't either. The hallway stilled. Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder, a gentle reminder he was there. Emily's bravery didn't come from being reckless. It came from being loved. Bennett exhaled sharply, turning toward Sarah. If we allow this circus to continue, we risk the integrity of he froze mid-sentence. Daniel's gaze had shifted, not threatening, but knowing. Watching Bennett not like an opponent, but like a man whose truth would eventually surface. And in that moment, Bennett looked away first. He cleared his throat. Admiral Hayes wants a full report in 20 minutes. Then you should go prepare it, Daniel replied calmly. Bennett hesitated, unused to dismissal by someone not in uniform. Then he spun and marched off, retreating behind titles and walls instead of conviction. When he disappeared, Sarah shook her head. Some men wear rank like armor because they never learned how to wear humility. Daniel didn't smile. Armor fails when it keeps truth out instead of danger. Before Sarah could respond, alarms blipped again, softer this time, diagnostic checks humming through circuits. Emily watched the light pulses across distant screens. Quiet. Focused. Daddy. She whispered it wasn't just messy code. Someone tried to cover the breaks, like taping a cracked pipe and pretending it's fine. Daniel's eyes sharpened, soldier instincts awakening. You're sure? Yes. She nodded firmly. Someone patched wrong on purpose. Maybe to hide mistakes. Maybe so nobody would know the system was tired. Sarah leaned in tension, rising. If someone covered flaws, that means negligence at best. Sabotage at worst. Daniel's jaw set. The quiet man's expression changed, not loud, not angry, but the stillness of a former warrior realizing danger wasn't distant. It was inside the walls, invisible, subtle, and human. Emily tugged his sleeve. Is it bad if someone hides mistakes? Daniel looked at her eyes, gentle again. It's worse when they know the truth and choose pride instead of fixing it. She nodded solemnly, as if adding another truth to her small internal library. They sat again, a father, his gifted daughter, and a scientist whose conscience was waking faster than her training. Outside, planes kept crossing the sky symbols of power. Inside, the real defense of the nation was happening around a bench and cocoa cups. Sarah lowered her voice. Daniel, who were you before this? He looked out the window to the flight line, the open horizon beyond military fences. Someone who learned that saving the world means nothing if you lose the reason you wanted to save it in the first place. Sarah followed his gaze and saw the shape of a story she didn't yet know, but deeply wanted to. Emily leaned against him again. Daddy, are we helping? Daniel smiled quietly, brushing her hair. We are reminding them what help looks like. The hum of distant servers vibrated faintly through the walls as they sat in that quiet corner, cocoa cooling truth settling heavy in the air. Emily leaned into Daniel, soft and thoughtful, while Sarah stared at nothing, processing. Outside, jets still carved strength across the sky, but inside another battlefield was taking shape. Not in open conflict, not with salutes or orders, but in corridors, screens, and pride. Daniel had seen this kind of battlefield before, the kind where the enemy wasn't a flag but a flaw, and flaws when buried were far more dangerous than foes who announced themselves. Emily murmured, Someone hid the mistakes, so no one would see the tired part. Sarah nodded slowly. And if that's true, someone's been protecting their career more than the country. Silence answered her, heavy, certain. Before Daniel could respond, footsteps approached, deliberate, confident, softer than boots, but no less authoritative. Admiral Rebecca Hayes stood before them again, tension drawn like a line between duty and doubt. "Mr. Carter." "Emily." Her voice was steady, but the edges frayed slightly, the weight of command pressing down. Daniel stood, offering a respectful nod. "Admiral." Rebecca's gaze moved to Emily, not wary, not skeptical anymore, but studying, seeing. "The system scan confirms instability across multiple frameworks. Your observations." She paused as though unused to giving such acknowledgement. "Were accurate." Emily twirled a string on her backpack, shy but steady. "Sometimes you fix broken things by looking where no one wants to." Rebecca inhaled a breath that seemed to cost something. Then her voice shifted lower. "Colonel Bennett believes we should escalate. He's proposing to treat your assessment as a breach of protocol." Sarah rose, eyes flashing. She didn't breach anything. She saw truth. Rebecca didn't disagree, but conflict simmered within her. This facility runs on hierarchy, on trust earned through rank, and a child challenging that reality. Daniel finished softly. "Feels like a threat." Rebecca met his eyes. Sharp, honest, conflicted. "Yes." For a moment they stood there, two leaders from different worlds, both shaped by duty, both haunted by consequences, unseen by others. Sarah stepped closer. "Admiral, we need to face the fact that Colonel Bennett is defensive for a reason." Rebecca's jaw flexed. "Accusing a superior without proof is a career-ending move, Doctor." Daniel looked at her with quiet gravity. And ignoring truth because of fear ends more than careers. For a heartbeat, she looked almost tired. Then she straightened, armor snapping back into place. "I need clarity. Are you suggesting internal negligence? Or something worse?" Emily's voice rose gently. "Not bad, like spy bad. Bad like scared bad." Sarah blinked. "Scared bad." Emily nodded, earnest. "When someone messes up, sometimes they hide it because they don't want to be punished. Then they hide again and again until it becomes a big knot." Daniel stroked her hair. "Fear is powerful. Pride, too." Rebecca studied the child. Small hands, clear eyes, wisdom born not from textbooks, but from seeing the world through truth and innocence. "You believe what we're dealing with isn't sabotage, but avoidance." Emily shrugged lightly. "If someone wanted to hurt things, they'd break everything at once. This is like someone trying too hard to pretend they didn't drop the plate." The analogy hung in the air, simple, undeniable. Before Rebecca could reply, alarms flared again, not as aggressively as before, but insistent. A tech hurried down the hall. Admiral network spike in Sector Foxtrot, and multiple redundant checks failed to trigger. Rebecca stiffened. "Show me." Then she hesitated, glancing at Daniel, at Emily. Something unspoken passed, not request, not order, but acknowledgement. She turned back to the tech. "Initiate manual trace, on my authority." As the tech hurried off, Rebecca exhaled. "Colonel Bennett is pushing to isolate the system and lock out all civilian presence, including yours. He claims it's for security." Daniel's face remained calm, but steel touched his voice. "Security without honesty is fragility wearing medals." Rebecca didn't deny it. Instead, she lifted her chin, decision forming. "I need to know everything you see, not just what you say, what you sense." Emily blinked. Sense. Rebecca's voice softened, not weak, but real. "Some people see data. You see patterns, intent, weakness hidden under protocol." Emily lowered her gaze. "I just don't like when things hurt and no one wants to fix it," Daniel murmured. "Compassion is clarity." Rebecca turned, slightly wrestling with her training. Her world was built on order. Their world, the one Daniel and Emily moved in, saw beyond it. Finally, she spoke. "Colonel Bennett will resist this. Hard." Sarah nodded. "Because if the truth surfaces, he falls with it." Rebecca didn't answer, which was answer enough. Emily's voice floated up tiny but true. "He's not the enemy. Fear is." Rebecca blinked, stunned by the simplicity of the weight. Daniel's gaze softened in quiet pride. Then the Admiral squared her shoulders. "We proceed. Carefully. Quietly." Daniel nodded once. Truth doesn't need noise, only light. As Rebecca turned to go, she paused, not facing them, but voice softer than command allowed most days. "I misjudged you." Daniel didn't move. Most judgment comes from distance. Rebecca swallowed. "And what comes from closeness?" He held her gaze when she finally faced him, understanding. Something flickered, fragile, unexpected human. Then duty reclaimed her posture. "We move in 20 minutes. She walked away. Sarah let out a slow breath. The ground just shifted. Daniel watched her go, not with triumph, but gratitude for a leader willing to feel truth. Emily took his hand. "Daddy." "Yes, love, are we in trouble?" He knelt again, brushing her cheek gently. "No. We are in truth. And truth is hard, but never trouble." She nodded, leaning into him. In the distance, techs hurried, alarms blinked, and somewhere inside this giant machine of national security, a crack widened, not from an attack, but from honesty seeping in. And for the first time, the system wasn't the only thing being tested. The people inside it were too. They remained seated after Admiral Hayes walked away. The weight of the moment settling like dust in quiet sunlight. The alarms had faded again, but the tension remained, the kind that didn't scream, but whispered in corners, traveled through glances, lived in unspoken truths. Emily rested her head on Daniel's arm, fingers tangled in his sleeve, like a child holding on to the one part of the world she knew would never let go. Sarah sat across from them, thoughtful, protective, and oddly grateful to have stumbled into this moment, one where innocence and integrity stood taller than rank. Daddy Emily murmured, "What happens when grown-ups don't listen to what's true?" Daniel brushed her hair, voice low. "Truth waits, sometimes in quiet, sometimes in storms, but it always waits." Emily nodded as if storing that away in her small but vast mind. Sarah leaned back, studying Daniel. "You know," she said softly, "most men would brag if their child did what she did today." Daniel's gaze stayed on Emily. "Bragging is noise. She deserves peace, not pressure." Emily looked up at him, small smile forming love so simple and so deep it felt sacred. Sarah saw it, and for the first time in a long time, she felt her heart soften in a place she didn't realize had hardened. The moment didn't last long. Footsteps approached, lighter than boots, slower than determination. Rebecca Hayes returned, but she wasn't marching this time. She walked like someone searching for footing on unfamiliar ground. "Mr. Carter," she began, but her voice held something new. Humility, learning to share space with command. Daniel stood gentle but respectful. "Admiral." Rebecca glanced at Emily, expression softening briefly. Then she looked at Daniel again, and something unguarded flickered in her eyes. Curiosity, and maybe a question she didn't yet know how to ask. "You handled yourself like someone who's been in high-pressure theaters before." Daniel didn't answer immediately. He wasn't evasive, he simply chose silence the way others chose words. Silence for him wasn't an absence, it was a decision. Rebecca continued quieter this time. Men with that kind of calm usually wear stars, or scars. Sarah shifted slightly, sensing the beginning of something raw. Emily turned toward her father, instinctively reaching for his hand. Daniel lifted her up, letting her settle on his hip, her head against his shoulder. He finally spoke. Some scars don't show, and some stars aren't sewn on uniforms. Rebecca's breath caught. She had seen soldiers carry pain like armor. She knew the sound of truth when it didn't need to prove itself. Sarah looked between them, sensing depth. Daniel, who were you? Daniel didn't look at them. He gazed out the window beyond security fences and control towers toward a distant runway where morning light glinted off metal. His voice was steady, almost quiet enough for only Emily to hear. I was someone the world needed once. Someone who followed orders, missions codes. Emily held him tight as if feeling memory stir behind his ribs. And then he continued, voice softer, yet somehow stronger. I became someone one little girl needed more. Sarah's throat tightened. Rebecca's jaw loosened, not in weakness, but in recognition. Too many soldiers she knew had lost homes, while defending borders, lost families, while protecting nations, lost themselves while serving flags. You walked away, she murmured. I walked toward something Daniel corrected gently, toward raising a child who would never mistake silence for weakness or strength for noise. Emily peeked up at him. You're my hero. He kissed the top of her head. And you are mine. The quiet between them wasn't empty. It was full of memory, sacrifice love that had chosen peace over power. Rebecca swallowed against the ache of understanding, deeply, painfully familiar. My husband, she began, then paused. Even her voice seemed surprised she had spoken. He served. He believed duty was love. He never understood that love is its own duty. A silence followed, not awkward, but shared. Wounds recognizing wounds. Daniel nodded. Service without heart becomes obedience, but service with love becomes honor. Rebecca looked down as though letting those words settle somewhere she hadn't let anything land in years. The intercom buzzed overhead, breaking the spell. Admiral Hayes, Colonel Bennett requests urgent counsel in briefing room 2. Rebecca's steady composure returned, but not fully. Something human stayed with her, now threaded through the steel. She straightened. I need to go. But before I do, she looked at Daniel, then at Emily, and for the first time the power in her posture came not only from rank, but respect. What happened here today, she said quietly, will not be buried, not by pride, not by fear. Emily blinked. Truth should shine, even if it starts small. Rebecca's lips curved, not quite a smile, but the beginnings of one. Yes, she said, even if it starts small. She turned to leave, then paused again, vulnerability flickering. Daniel, did leaving hurt? He answered without hesitation. Letting go always hurts, but losing her would have destroyed me. Emily hugged him tighter. Rebecca nodded once, slow understanding cutting through her like a clean blade. Duty changes shape. Some of us learn late. Then she was gone. Footsteps gradually swallowed by machinery and distance. Sarah exhaled. She admires you. Daniel gave a quiet half-smile. She admires truth. She'll find her way. Emily tugged his collar. Daddy. Yes, did Mommy help you choose love? His eyes softened, old grief wrapped in peace. She taught me that love isn't weakness. It is why we stand strong. Emily touched his cheek. I think Mommy's proud. Daniel's voice barely held. I think so too. From across the room, soldiers shouted. Systems beeped. Officers rushed. But in this corner, a father and daughter sat in something far stronger than command centers and defense codes. They sat in love. And love, quiet and unwavering, was rewriting the battlefield. The hallway felt different after Rebecca left. Not lighter, not heavier, but charged, as though invisible threads were pulling tight between truth and consequence. Sarah sat back down, slowly processing, while Emily traced small circles on Daniel's sleeve. grounding herself in the man who never changed tone, even when the world around him shook. Daniel stroked her hair absently, mind somewhere between past and present. He had walked away from battlefields before, desert jungle war rooms, full of men shouting strategies that forgot humans. But this battlefield was different. Here, the weapon wasn't firepower. It was truth. And truth, when unwelcome, had a sharper edge than steel. Emily lifted her head. "Daddy, do grown-ups get scared of being wrong?" Daniel gave a soft hum, not a laugh, but a sound that understood too much. "The dangerous ones do." Sarah shook her head in quiet admiration. She doesn't just see systems, she sees people. Daniel glanced at his daughter, eyes full of the kind of love that made an entire life make sense. She sees hearts, and where hearts hide. Before more could be said, security radios crackled with clipped tension. "Command alert, Colonel Bennett entering Situation Room. Repeat, Colonel Bennett moving to secure authority chain." Sarah stiffened. That's not standard phrasing. Daniel's expression cooled, not panic, but preparation. "He's moving faster than truth can." Emily swung her legs nervously. "Did we do wrong?" Daniel knelt and looked into her eyes, not as a father soothing a child, but as a teacher passing down strength. "We did right. Right doesn't fear noise." Emily nodded, swallowing courage like medicine. Just then, a security officer approached with measured urgency. He paused before Daniel, uncertainty flickering. Respect warred with unfamiliarity. "Sir Admiral Hayes requests your presence, you and your daughter." "Now." Sarah stood. "I'm coming too." But the officer lifted a hand. "Only them." Sarah's jaw tightened. This is madness. They shouldn't be alone in a room with whatever Bennett is planning. Daniel placed a steady hand on her shoulder. Gratitude, reassurance, promise. "We won't be alone. Truth walks with us," Emily whispered, "and Mommy watches." Daniel squeezed her hand. "Always." They followed the officer down the corridor, wide, cold, lined with portraits of stern leaders, staring down decades of decisions. Emily's sneakers squeaked softly, an innocent contrast to the silent determination in Daniel's steps. As they neared the Situation Room, raised voices bled through the steel door. Bennett's voice, sharp with anger. "This is a military matter, not a family parade." Rebecca, firm but strained Colonel, stand down. Bennett again, louder, cracked pride turning to hostility. "You're letting a child and a janitor dictate national defense." Emily winced. Daniel's hand settled gently on her shoulder, a shield without armor. The door opened. The room froze. Command screens glowed with warning lines. Bennett stood rigid, jaw clenched so tightly the muscle twitched. Officers along the table shifted uncomfortably. Rebecca turned, eyes landing first on Emily, softening just enough to reveal humanity beneath command steel. Daniel stepped forward. Posture. Calm, controlled, impossible to ignore. Rebecca's voice lowered. "Thank you for coming." Bennett scoffed, unable to contain his resentment. "This is absurd. This man shouldn't even be here." And the child Rebecca cut him off sharply. "Colonel." But Bennett didn't stop. He turned toward security. "Detain him. We're containing a breach." The room stiffened a moment, so tense the air itself seemed to hold breath. Emily tightened her grip on Daniel's hand. Daniel didn't move, didn't flinch. He simply looked at Bennett as if seeing through him past uniform, past authority, into the wounded pride beneath. "Fear makes poor leaders," Colonel Daniel said quietly. "And worse servants." Bennett flushed fury, cracking through restraint. "You don't belong in this room." Daniel's reply was calm as still water. "Belonging isn't about permission. It's about purpose." Rebecca stepped between them, voice steady, but edged. "Colonel Bennett, you are out of line." Bennett's eyes darted wildly desperation creeping into arrogance. "You're risking the integrity of this command over them." Emily's voice rose tiny but trembling with truth. "We didn't break anything." The room went still. She stepped forward, shaking slightly, but brave in the way only hearts unscarred by ego can be. "We tried to help, but helping hurts when someone is scared of being seen." Bennett stared at her, and for a flicker, fear flashed in his eyes. Not of danger, of exposure. He turned on Rebecca. "You let a child embarrass this command. If you continue this charade, I'll..." Rebecca's voice cut like a blade. "You'll what?" Bennett swallowed. His throat bobbed. His authority finally trembled. Daniel's voice was soft. Dangerous, not in tone, but truth. "You didn't fear sabotage. You feared discovery." Bennett's composure broke rage, cracking into something raw or panic. "Security," Rebecca snapped. "Stand down. No one moves without my order." Silence crushed the room. Bennett looked around, seeking someone to hold his pride, finding none. The cracks in his authority showed like fractures in porcelain. The weight of truth began to crush him. Daniel knelt beside Emily, voice warm, grounding her. "You spoke truth bravely." Emily's eyes stayed on Bennett. Hurting isn't fixing. It was an accusation. It was grief for someone who chose pride over help. Rebecca exhaled, slow, heavy. Then she turned to the officers. "Effective immediately, Colonel Bennett is relieved of command pending investigation." Bennett paled. His mouth opened. No words came. Rebecca met Daniel's eyes. Respect, gratitude, humility. "You stood quiet when others shouted," she said softly. "And in silence, you showed us more strength than rank ever could." Emily leaned against Daniel, exhausted but peaceful. Daniel nodded once. Truth doesn't yell. Rebecca's voice nearly broke, but it shakes foundations. Just then, Emily tugged Daniel's shirt. "Daddy, can we go home now?" Daniel brushed a hand through her hair. "Soon, little one." He rose, meeting Rebecca's gaze. "Take care of your house, Admiral. A nation stands only as strong as those who protect it." Rebecca held his eyes, voice barely above a whisper. "And sometimes, it takes a child to remind us why we guard it." The room didn't applaud. It breathed, relieved, humbled, changed. In a world of power and protocol, a quiet family had just shifted the axis, not through force, not through rank, through truth, soft as a child's voice, strong as a father's love. Bennett's boots scraped across the polished floor as security escorted him out. The door sealed behind him with a muted hydraulic sigh, not triumphant, not dramatic, but heavy like a chapter closing in a book that never should have been written. The room exhaled. Command screens continued their silent flicker, tracing defense grids and encrypted channels. But in that moment, every pair of eyes was fixed, not on global threats, but on an 8-year-old girl leaning against her father's shoulder. Silence wrapped around them, not awkward, but reverent, like a flag lowered at sunset. Emily's voice broke the stillness, gentle and earnest. "Daddy, he wasn't bad, just scared." Daniel brushed a lock of hair behind her ear. Fear can make people dangerous when they feel exposed. Rebecca watched the scene, the tenderness, the quiet clarity, and felt her own armor shift inside. For years, she had believed that strength lived in discipline, authority command. Now, standing in front of a little girl who carried wisdom like breath, she felt that belief soften into something truer. Strength lives in humility. Sarah stepped closer. "We need to confirm the system's integrity now that Bennett's authority has been revoked." Rebecca nodded, regaining command posture, but not the rigid steel it once carried. Initiate full diagnostic sweep. No shortcuts, no legacy clearance overrides. A chorus of "Yes, ma'am" filled the room. Emily tugged Daniel's sleeve. Do we still need to help? Daniel knelt. Only if they ask. Truth doesn't push, it waits. Rebecca overheard, and for the first time she smiled. Small. Real. Emily, could you take one more look, not to fix, just to tell us if we're looking in the right direction? Emily hesitated. Daniel didn't answer for her. He simply held her hand, supporting, not guiding. She nodded slowly. Okay. But only a peek. Rebecca inclined her head, the respect in the gesture unmistakable. Of course. An analyst opened the terminal. Emily leaned forward, scanning columns of data. Her brow knit, concentration soft but precise, like someone reading the emotion behind a sentence. Not the words. She tapped one segment lightly. Here. This is where it starts. Sarah peered at the screen. This is a root access log. Emily nodded. Lots of loops. Someone tried to fix a mistake by covering it. Then another person covered that. Like stacking cards wrong but pretending it's okay. Rebecca's jaw tightened. So Bennett wasn't alone. Emily's small voice held no judgment, only truth. People follow leaders, even when leaders are tired or scared. Sarah whispered. She sees systems the way monks see souls. Emily slid off the chair and stepped back. Done. Rebecca gave a slow, respectful nod. More than enough. Moments later, a deep electronic tone signaled the diagnostic completion. Lines of green text scrolled. 847 system flaws identified. Primary causes: improper patch layering protocol negligence, bypassed safeguards. A stunned murmur filled the room. Sarah read aloud, voice trembling. It wasn't sabotage. It was neglect covered by pride. A senior officer looked shaken. Years of layered mistakes. Nobody dared admit it. So they buried it. Daniel rested a hand over Emily's, the gesture saying everything. Rebecca turned to the room. We correct every flaw. We build new oversight. We learn from this. No one objected. Respect commanded without force. Then the doors opened, and a new presence entered. General Ethan Whitmore. Deep-set eyes, silver hair, shoulders that carried decades of national secrets. He paused, surveying the room like a man who could read morale faster than code. Status, he asked. Rebecca stepped forward. Internal failure, sir. Not enemy breach. A slow nod. Accountability. Colonel Bennett relieved pending full investigation. Good. His gaze moved, searching for the center of gravity in the room. It found Emily. He approached with measured steps, then lowered himself slightly. Not kneeling, but bending in respect older men rarely give children. You saw what others ignored. Emily fidgeted. I didn't try to show them. I just didn't want things to break. Whitmore's voice softened. If only our world had more people like you. He turned to Daniel. She gets that from somewhere. Daniel shook his head lightly. She gives me more than I ever gave her. Rebecca watched something warm in her expression, like a wall she kept for duty slowly finding windows. Whitmore straightened. Admiral Hayes. I expect a formal recommendation for commendation. Rebecca blinked. For the child, for both. His tone allowed no argument. Courage has many forms. He looked at Daniel again, and this time recognition lit his eyes. Not a face, but spirit. You've worn duty before. Daniel didn't confirm, didn't deny. He didn't need to. Whitmore continued, voice low. When a man chooses family over rank, that is not retreat. It is victory. Daniel felt his chest pull tight. Grief, pride, memory braided into one quiet ache. A faint tremor touched Rebecca's voice. Sir, I'd like to personally deliver that commendation. Whitmore gave a rare smile. I think that would be appropriate. Emily tugged Daniel's shirt. "Daddy, did we fix the world a little?" Daniel lifted her into his arms. We reminded a small part of it what truth looks like. Whitmore nodded approvingly. "Stay on base until debrief is complete, not as detainees." He paused. "As honored guests." Emily's eyes widened. "Does that mean snacks?" Rebecca almost laughed, a soft exhale, a shake of the head, gentle amusement cutting through command weight. "I think we can manage that." The tension broke, not in applause, not in cheer, but in breath, returning hearts, settling purpose, finding steadier ground. As Daniel turned to lead Emily out, Rebecca called softly, "Mr. Carter." He paused. "Thank you for reminding this place what strength looks like." He nodded once, humble, steady. "Strength listens." She held his gaze. And today, it learned. They walked out, father carrying daughter soldiers, watching with respect. They didn't yet know how to voice leaders humbled, a system beginning to heal. Sometimes truth doesn't topple walls. Sometimes it opens doors. They walked out of the situation room, not as intruders anymore, not as questions in a space built on answers, but as quiet witnesses of truth finally allowed to breathe. Outside the base hummed with renewed order, soldiers moving with purpose, technicians restoring systems, officers speaking in low, respectful tones. Emily clung to Daniel's shirt, exhaustion and relief woven together in her small voice. "Is everything safe now?" Daddy, Daniel kissed the top of her head. "It's safer than it was this morning." She nodded, satisfied, not because she understood the full scale of what had happened, but because she trusted the heart that had carried her through it. Sarah joined them, walking at their side like someone who had found her compass again. "There's going to be ceremony," she murmured. "Recognition. They don't often admit needing help, but today, they will." Daniel offered a soft smile. "Recognition isn't why we helped." "I know," she replied gently. "That's why it matters." Soon after, Rebecca approached, but not with the rigid march of command. Her steps were measured, grounded almost, human in their tempo. "Mr. Carter," she said, voice steady yet warm. "Emily." Emily straightened instinctively, as if acknowledging some important moment in her small life. Rebecca held a folder, not thick, but weighty in meaning. "General Whitmore has ordered a formal commendation. A ceremony will begin shortly. Your presence is required." Daniel nodded once. "We'll be there." But Rebecca didn't move yet. She stood there holding something inside that wanted release, but didn't yet know the shape of freedom. After a breath, she spoke, not as a commanding officer, but as a woman remembering how to feel. "When I took this command," she began, "I thought strength meant carrying weight alone. Today I learned even strength must sometimes be guided or humbled by quieter truths." Daniel met her eyes. "Leading isn't knowing everything. It's knowing when to listen." Her lips curved not in smile, but in gratitude. "And today, I listened." Emily grinned softly. "Listening is like fixing code. You find the knots." Rebecca blinked, as if that simple sentence struck deeper than any strategic briefing ever had. "Yes," she said quietly. "You untied a knot today in this system, and perhaps in me." Silence settled between them, respectful, warm, new. Then the intercom chimed all personnel to main hall for commendation ceremony. Rebecca inhaled, resettling her shoulders, not into armor this time, but into honor. "Follow me." The hall filled slowly, medals, glinting boots, polished flags, steady and silent witness. Uniforms lined the walls, salutes sharp, yet there was something softer in the air. Curiosity, respect, a hint of awe. Daniel didn't stand in front like a man claiming spotlight. He stood to the side, Emily by his hand, letting the room's gaze fall on her first. His presence wasn't loud, but everyone felt it. Rebecca took the podium. Her voice, when it rang out, held authority. Yes, but also humility, earned, not inherited. Today she began, "We acknowledge a truth larger than rank. Strength does not always wear stars. Guidance does not always come from experience. And wisdom sometimes comes in small voices." Eyes drifted to Emily. She blushed and pressed closer to Daniel. This child, Rebecca continued, saw what we could not. Not because she sought importance, but because she sought to help. And in doing so, she reminded us of the foundations we serve: integrity, courage, protection of those who cannot protect themselves. A hush. Pride softened by humility. And her father, she added. Gaze, settling on Daniel, stood with a strength that did not need title or uniform. The kind of strength that holds when systems fall. The kind that comes from sacrifice and love. Something flickered across her expression: respect, admiration, maybe even something deeper, quieter, unspoken. She turned, and General Whitmore stepped forward. In his hands, 2 medallions, silver gleaming under the lights. Emily fidgeted. Daniel steadied her with a gentle squeeze. Whitmore spoke, voice warm with gravity. Emily Carter, for uncommon clarity, for courage, guided by compassion, and for serving the truth without fear. We award you the civilian honor of distinction. Applause rose, not explosive, but meaningful, proud, touched. Emily's eyes widened as Whitmore placed the ribbon around her neck. "Thank you," she whispered. Whitmore knelt slightly. "No, thank you." Then he stood before Daniel holding the second medal. Daniel Carter, for integrity under pressure, for embodying the highest values of this nation, even outside uniform, and for raising a spirit who strengthens us all. We offer recognition and invitation. Daniel tilted his head. Invitation. Whitmore smiled knowingly. To return, in whatever capacity you choose. We need men like you. Daniel's breath caught memories stirred, loss flickered, pride warmed. A door opened, not forced, not demanded, just offered. He nodded slowly. "I'll consider it." Whitmore respected the answer without pressing. That is all any true leader asks. They shook hands, firm, quiet, equal. After the ceremony, officers broke into conversation, but Daniel and Emily found a quiet corner away from ceremony noise, just breathing in the moment. Rebecca approached again, without medals, without titles, just a woman walking towards something new. She stood beside him, gaze following Emily, as she traced her new ribbon with small fingers. "You could come back, you know," she said softly. "Not to serve rank, but to serve purpose." Daniel didn't answer right away. His eyes were distant, but peaceful. "I've already served. I've bled. I've lost." She nodded slowly. "I know," he added, voice gentle. "Right now she needs me more than the system does." Rebecca looked at Emily, then back at him, eyes filled with admiration. Not for power, but for love. "And that is why the system still needs people like you." Emily tugged Daniel's hand. "Daddy, can we go get ice cream?" He smiled, small, quiet, pure. "Yes, sweetheart." Rebecca exhaled a soft laugh, a proper debrief. Daniel's glance held warmth. Some things heal better with sweetness. Rebecca looked at him, truly, looked and spoke without command, without agenda. "If you ever want company for that ice cream one day, I'd like to join." It wasn't flirting. It was respect. A door. A beginning. Emily grinned. "Daddy likes strawberry. I like chocolate." "What do you like?" Rebecca paused, softened, then answered gently. "Vanilla. Simple. Steady." Daniel's gaze held hers for a quiet heartbeat. Simple can be good. Their silence wasn't empty. It was full of possibility, of respect, of something warm enough to wait for. Emily tugged again. "Come on. Ice cream melts. Daniel chuckled, lifting her. Then we'd better hurry. Rebecca stepped aside, watching them go. Strength softened by healing command, reshaped by compassion. Heart beginning to remember how to open. Not rushed, not demanded. Slow. Earned. Human. The afternoon sun spilled across the military runway. Like gold, brushed over steel, soft light. Meeting hard edges, a reminder that even the strongest places needed warmth. The ceremony had ended. Applause had faded. Voices dimmed to murmurs, then to the gentle hum of bass activity returning to routine. But some moments don't return to routine. Some moments quietly plant themselves, knowing they will grow into the rest of a life. Daniel carried Emily across the courtyard, her new medal glinting against her small chest. She held her ice cream cup in one hand, spoon in the other, drifting between tired and triumphant in the way only children can. "Daddy," she whispered, leaning sleepily on his shoulder. "Being brave is tiring." He kissed her forehead. "That's why real brave people rest." She nodded, satisfied eyelids fluttering like she might fall asleep right there in his arms. Sarah walked beside them for a time, sharing gentle smiles and quiet pride, before turning toward the science wing, with a wave duty calling her back. But heart changed forever by what she'd witnessed. Finally, they reached the far edge of the airstrip, wide, quiet open. Beyond the fence, the horizon stretched endlessly, as though the world had widened itself after a truth had finally been spoken. Daniel lowered Emily onto a low concrete barrier. She swung her legs, staring at the jets parked under the sun. "They look like birds waiting to fly," she murmured. "They are," he replied softly. She leaned into his side. The wind brushed against them, not sharp like morning, but soft and settling like the exhale after a storm. Emily traced her medal absent-mindedly. "Daddy, did Mommy fly, too?" Daniel's breath caught a familiar ache, but no longer raw. She flew in ways most people never see. She lifted hearts. She held our world together. Emily rested her head on him again. Now we do that for each other. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment. Pride and grief and joy all braided together. "Yes, sweetheart. We do." Footsteps approached from behind, not hurried, not hesitant, somewhere between certainty and grace. Daniel didn't turn immediately. He felt her presence before seeing her. Admiral Rebecca Hayes stopped a few steps away, uniform jacket undone, now cap, tucked under her arm. Not a commander arriving, but a person. A woman who had spent years bracing herself against vulnerability, now allowing herself to stand softer in the sunlight. "You two have a way of finding the quiet corners," she said gently. Daniel smiled slightly. "Quiet corners tend to find us." She stepped beside them, looking out over the runway. For a long moment, none of them spoke. They just stood there, a military leader, a silent soldier, turned father, and a little girl who saw truth as clearly as light. Then Rebecca exhaled. "It's strange," she murmured. "All the training we go through, all the strategy, yet sometimes the thing that saves us is innocence." She looked at Emily, and courage shaped by love. Emily blinked up sleepily. "Courage is easier when someone holds your hand." Rebecca's throat tightened. "I imagine so." Daniel glanced at the Admiral, not with challenge, not with assumption, just quiet understanding. Leadership isn't always about standing in front. Sometimes it's about standing beside. Rebecca met his gaze, unguarded, grateful. And sometimes it's about learning when to follow someone braver than you. Her eyes flicked to Emily, who had begun drawing shapes in the dusty concrete, with her spoon heart's airplane stars. Daniel chuckled softly. She leads without knowing it. That's what makes her powerful, Rebecca replied. Then after a moment, she added in a tone fragile with truth. That's what makes you powerful too. Silence again, but a meaningful one. The kind that sits gently, not awkwardly. A jet roared to life in the distance, rolling forward, engines building. Emily watched it, eyes shining with awe. It's going to fly, she whispered. Rebecca nodded. It is. Emily hugged her medal. Flying feels like starting again. Daniel's eyes lifted to the sky. A lot of things do. Rebecca studied him quietly. The wind ruffled his long hair, sunlight catching the quiet strength in his profile. A man shaped by storms, but not hardened by them. A man who had chosen life over rank, love over command, healing over pride. Daniel, she said softly, you could come back. On your own terms. The offer stands. He breathed slowly. Maybe one day. But right now, my mission is here. He looked at Emily, and the entire world fit gently in that gaze. Rebecca nodded, not disappointed, but moved. That's the noblest mission I've ever seen. Emily suddenly turned to her. Do you want ice cream? Rebecca blinked. Ice cream. Emily nodded earnestly. Chocolate is better when you share. Rebecca laughed, startled by how light it felt. I would like that. Daniel's smile was warm. Then join us sometime. Her voice lowered, sincere. I'd like that very much. Another plane thundered down the runway, lifting into the air. Emily lifted her arms as if she too could rise with it. Daddy, she whispered. Someday can we fly again? Not airplanes. Just life. Daniel tightened his arm around her. We already are. The jet disappeared into the horizon. The wind settled. The world felt larger not because of power, but because of possibility. Rebecca spoke softly, voice almost a tremor. We all protect what we love. We just choose different ways. Daniel turned to her voice, steady, grounded. And today, we protected the future. Together. Rebecca's eyes warmed. Hope lived there now, quiet, patient. Then, let today be a beginning. Daniel nodded. Slow beginnings make strong endings. Emily slipped her small hand into Rebecca's. Slow is good. That's how love walks. Rebecca inhaled deeply, a new breath, a new path, a new softness in a life that had forgotten how to open. Yes, she whispered. Slow is good. They stood there, three figures watching the sky, not needing words. No triumphant music, no dramatic salute. Just the thrum of engines fading into distance, the hum of wind against concrete, and the stillness that comes when hearts realign with hope. A father, a daughter, a woman rediscovering her own humanity. Not heroes in a parade, but protectors of what truly matters. Quiet strength, quiet love, a quiet promise the world needs more of. Fade out, not into darkness, but into light. Because some endings aren't closures, they're takeoffs. Before we say goodbye today, I'd love to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Tell us your city, your state, or your country in the comments. It warms our hearts to see how far these stories travel, and how many wonderful souls share this space with us. And if our story touched you, if it reminded you of the quiet strength in this world of kindness, family, and the courage that doesn't need to shout, we gently invite you to subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us continue sharing healing stories of honor, love, and quiet heroes. From the bottom of our hearts, thank you for spending this time with us. Thank you for believing in goodness. And thank you for being part of this beautiful community. Until the next story, stay kind, stay hopeful, and take good care of yourself.